Can you imagine building an empire, conquering the world, and suddenly discovering that the greatest treasure of your life has always been where you least expected it? Daniel always believed that success meant money, power, and control. But everything changes when the past knocks on his door. Laura, the woman he left behind, reappears with a truth that turns his world upside down. You have a son. 5 years have passed. 5 years in which he lived without knowing that Luca existed. Now he has to face reality. It's not about business anymore. It's about being a father. But is it too late to make up for lost time? Laura doesn't trust him. Luca doesn't know him. And Daniel will have to prove that he's not just a man used to buying what he wants. He'll have to win something that no amount of money can buy, the love of a child. And when the opportunity arises to return to the top of the business world, he will face his biggest choice yet, follow his old life or embrace the family he never knew he had. What really counts the most? What defines a true father? This isn't just a story about redemption, it's a story about discovering what really matters. Daniel adjusted his cufflinks as he walked out of the office building. The sun was reflecting in the mirrored windows, and his limousine was already waiting for him in the driveway. He liked this routine, the absolute control it exerted over his life. No surprises, no distractions. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He picked it up without hurrying, but when he saw the name on the screen, his body tensed. Laura. He frowned. It had been years since they had last spoken. He hesitated for a moment, but picked up. Laura? We need to talk, she said bluntly. Her voice sounded firm, but it carried a weight that he couldn't identify. About what? I can't talk on the phone. Tomorrow, at 8, in the cafe near the square. Laura, I have a busy schedule. I can't just... It's not a request, Daniel. The call dropped. He stared at the phone for a few seconds. He could have ignored it. But something in her tone made him realize that this conversation couldn't wait. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the cafe. Laura was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. She looked different. Her eyes had the same intensity as before, but there was something in them, something he didn't recognize. You came, she said without emotion. You were convincing, he replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down. She wasted no time. You have a son. The world around him fell silent. He blinked. His name is Luca. His name is Luca. He's 5 years old. Daniel let out a low, nervous laugh. This is a joke, right? Do you think I would joke about something like that? He felt a chill run down his spine. If it were true, you would have told me before. She crossed her arms. I tried, but you were too busy living your perfect life. Daniel remained silent. Something inside him screamed that she was telling the truth. I want proof. Laura took a folder out of her bag and pushed it towards him. Tests, birth certificate, photos, everything in there. He opened the folder with trembling hands. His name was there, in the father's field. It was real. Laura looked at him. I'm not here to ask for anything. He looked up. So why now? She took a deep breath. Because Luca started asking about his father. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. And what did you say? She looked away. Nothing yet. The coffee seemed too small, the air too thick. What do you want from me, Laura? She held his gaze. If you're not going to stay, don't even try. Her words weighed like lead. Daniel knew that his life would never be the same again. Daniel stared at the open folder on the table. The photos, the documents, the dates. Everything pointed to the same truth. He was a father. But how was that possible? How could Laura have hidden something like that for so long? He closed the folder tightly. You should have told me before. Laura crossed her arms, impassive. I tried to. But you were too busy conquering the world to notice. Daniel took a deep breath. That's not fair. Fair? Laura let out a humorless laugh. You left me, Daniel. You went on with your life without looking back. Do you really think I had the space to come to you and tell you I was pregnant? He remained silent. Did you want to? She continued. Did you want a family when you decided I wasn't enough? Her words were a punch. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Daniel looked away. He didn't want to fight. He wanted to understand. What do you want me to do now? Laura exhaled slowly. I didn't come here to ask for anything. But you're asking me to decide. I am. He rubbed his face. I need time. She nodded, but her eyes made it clear. Time is not something Luca has had from you for the last 5 years. Daniel drove aimlessly. The folder of documents rested on the passenger seat, like a silent reminder of everything that had changed. He stopped the car at a traffic light and saw a father holding his son's hand as they crossed the road. He took a deep breath. Could he go on with his life as if nothing had happened? Could he simply ignore that truth? He picked up his cell phone and typed a message to Laura. I want to meet you. The reply came a few minutes later. Tomorrow, in the park. He felt his heart race. It was official. He was going to meet his son. But what if Luca didn't like him? The next morning, Daniel arrived at the park a few minutes earlier than scheduled. Laura was sitting on a bench watching a child playing in the sand. He knew immediately that it was Luca. His heart raced. She stood up when she saw him. He doesn't know who you are. Daniel nodded. What do I do? Just be nice. Luca picked up a toy car and started pushing it across the sand. Laura caught his eye. Luca, this is Daniel. The boy looked at him, curious. Hi, he said without emotion. That's all. No smile, no excitement. Daniel swallowed. Hi, Luca. The boy turned his attention to the sand. Laura sighed. It's going to take time. Daniel didn't know what to say. For the first time in his life, he didn't know how to act. Daniel had never felt so out of place in his life. He, who was used to running boardrooms and closing million-dollar deals, now didn't know how to approach a 5-year-old boy. Luca continued to play in the sand, as if Daniel wasn't there. He looked at Laura, who just crossed her arms and waited. Taking a deep breath, Daniel crouched down next to the boy. What are you building? Luca shrugged. A city. It looks well organized. The boy didn't answer, concentrating on his work. Daniel looked around, searching for something to say. Can I help you? Luca stared at him for a second, then shrugged again. If you like. It was a minimal advance, but enough for Daniel to feel a slight sense of relief. The minutes passed, and Daniel tried to get involved in what Luca was doing. He grabbed a handful of sand and began to shape a road. Do you like cities? Yes. Any favorites? I haven't seen many yet, the boy answered simply. Daniel smiled. Fair enough. Laura watched from afar without interfering. After a while she approached. Luca, it's snack time. The boy nodded and stood up. Daniel stood up too. So, it was nice playing with you. Luca just gave a little wave before following Laura to the bench where his backpack was. Daniel stood still, feeling strange. He didn't know what he was expecting from this meeting, but he was sure he was expecting more. Hours later, Daniel was in his office, staring at the city through the glass wall. The phone rang. So, how did it go? It was Henrique, his lawyer and friend. Strange. How strange? Daniel sighed. He barely looked at me. He's 5 years old, Daniel, and you've just come into his life. He wiped his hand across his face. I don't know if I can do it. And you're going to give up? Daniel didn't answer straight away. No, I'm not. Then stop acting like it's a contract. This isn't a deal you need to close. Daniel remained silent. Henrique laughed. Are you laughing? A little. I've never seen you so lost. Daniel sighed. Because I've never been. Over the next few days, Daniel tried to learn more about Luca. Laura told him a few things, what he liked to eat, his favorite drawings, how he loved dinosaurs. Then, at the next meeting, Daniel showed up with a picture book about dinosaurs. When he handed it over, Luca gave a discreet smile. Wow. It was the first time he had seen the boy show excitement around him. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. Do you like it? Luca nodded, flipping through the pages quickly. "That's the T-Rex," he said, pointing to an illustration. "Is he your favorite?" "Yes, he's the king of the dinosaurs." Daniel smiled. "Good choice." Laura watched the scene from afar, her eyes softening. Daniel realized that there was still hope. Daniel began to realize that connecting with Luca was a slow process, made up of small advances. The dinosaur book had been a first step, but there was still a long way to go before the boy saw him as someone who deserved to be there. He couldn't just show up and expect everything to change, but he didn't know how else to do it. At the next meeting, Laura welcomed him with her arms crossed. "You're trying to buy his attention." Daniel frowned. "What's that? Gifts, surprises, little books? Do you think you can solve everything like that?" He took a deep breath. "I'm just trying to find a way to get closer." "Then really try. No shortcuts." He felt the weight of her words. Laura never took it easy on him. "How?" "Spend time with him, really." Daniel was silent for a moment, then he nodded. The following afternoon, instead of taking something for Luca, Daniel just showed up at the park, willing to be there. Luca was playing with other boys, and this time, when he saw Daniel, he hesitated for a second before running over to him. "Hi." It was simple, but something in the way he said it made Daniel's heart race. "Hi, champ." Luca pointed to a toy in the playground. "I can climb to the top." Daniel smiled. "I want to see." Luca ran, climbing the supports until he reached the highest platform. "I did it!" he shouted, excited. Daniel applauded. "That was incredible." The boy climbed down and stopped next to him. "Have you been up there yet?" Daniel laughed. "I think it's been a while." Luca frowned. "Are you afraid?" Daniel arched an eyebrow. "Are you challenging me?" The boy smiled. "Maybe." Daniel sighed dramatically. "That's fine." He climbed slowly, listening to Laura's laughter in the background. When he reached the top, he looked down. "Okay, I admit it, it's higher than I remembered." Luca laughed. "You're scared?" Daniel smiled. "Maybe a little." He climbed down and sat next to Luca on the swing. "Do you like this park?" "Yes. Mum always brings me." Daniel watched Laura, who was talking to another mother in the distance. "Has she always been good to you?" Luca looked at him, confused. "Of course, she's the best." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. Laura raised their son alone, and she did it well. As the sun began to set, Laura approached. "We need to go." Luca turned to Daniel. "Are you coming another day?" Daniel blinked. It was the first time Luca had asked. He looked at Laura, who just watched in silence. Then he smiled. "Yes, I'll be back." And this time, he really wanted to. Daniel began to notice that the more time he spent with Luca, the more natural it became. The boy no longer looked at him like a stranger. He was already waiting for him to meet him in the park. Small moments, casual conversations, spontaneous smiles. Everything was changing. But there was one thing that was still unresolved. Laura. He knew she still didn't trust him, and honestly he understood. That evening, Laura sent him a message. "Can we talk?" Daniel replied immediately. "Yes, where?" "Here at home." He hesitated. He had never been to her house. But he knew this conversation was necessary. Half an hour later, Daniel was at the door of Laura's apartment. She welcomed him with her arms crossed. "Did he sleep?" he asked. "Yes." "Come in." He went in and looked around. The apartment was simple but cozy. There were toys scattered on the floor and drawings stuck to the fridge. The life he hadn't known. Laura was direct. "What do you want with Luca, Daniel?" He frowned. "What are you talking about? You're here. You're trying. But for how long?" He sighed. "I'm not going anywhere." Laura crossed her arms. "You can say that now. But then what? When work picks up, when your life returns to normal, will you still be here? Don't you think I've changed?" "I think you want to believe that you have. But I've seen this movie before, Daniel. You disappear when the going gets tough." He felt the weight of the words. "I made a mistake with you, I know that." She didn't answer straight away. "I just can't let Luca get attached to you and then watch him suffer." The silence dragged on. Then Daniel broke the distance between them. "I'm not going to disappear. Not this time." Laura's eyes sparkled for a moment. "I hope you're right." And for the first time, he realized that he needed to prove it. Over the next few days, Daniel realized that he was different. Before, his mind was always occupied with meetings, investments, and business decisions. Now his thoughts turned to something completely new: Luca. The boy began to trust him. He no longer hesitated before taking him by the hand. He no longer looked away when Daniel arrived. And for the first time, Daniel realized that he didn't just want to be present. He wanted to be a real father. One afternoon in the park, Luca was playing on the swing, while Daniel gently pushed him. "Have you always lived here?" asked the boy. "Not always," Daniel replied. "Where did you go?" Daniel hesitated. "I've worked in many places. I've spent a lot of time away." Luca shook his legs. "But why?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I thought I needed to be elsewhere, but I guess I was wrong." Luca looked at him and smiled. "You're here now." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. Yes, he was there, but for how long? That evening, while they were having dinner in Laura's apartment, Daniel felt comfortable, almost as if he belonged there. Luca was animatedly telling him about a game he had learned, and Laura was watching him with a gentle gaze. Daniel smiled, enjoying the moment. But then the phone rang. He looked at the display. Enrique. Laura noticed his hesitation. "You can answer it if you like." Daniel turned off the screen. "Not now." Laura frowned in surprise. "Since when do you ignore work calls?" He shrugged. "Some things are more important." She held his gaze for a moment. Daniel knew she understood. Later that night, after Luca had gone to bed, Daniel received a message from Enrique. "We need to talk. Urgent." Sighing, he left the apartment and called back. "What?" "One of your former investors wants to help you get back on the market." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means that if you accept, in a few months you could be at the top again." Daniel remained silent. For years, this was the kind of offer he would never hesitate to accept. But now... "Are you still there?" Henry asked. "Yes, I am." "So," Daniel closed his eyes, "I need to think." "Don't think too much. The market waits for no one." Daniel hung up and stood still, looking at the illuminated city in front of him. This was everything he had ever wanted, but now, for the first time, he wasn't sure if he wanted more. The next day, Laura noticed that he was quieter. "What's wrong?" Daniel stirred his food. "I got an offer to go back to the market." She put down her cutlery calmly. "And that's good, isn't it?" He hesitated. "I don't know." Laura stared at him. "I never thought I'd hear that from you." Daniel let out a weak laugh. "Neither did I." She intertwined her fingers. "Are you afraid that this will affect your relationship with Luca?" He nodded. Laura sighed. "Then there's only one question you need to answer, Daniel." He looked up at her. "What really matters to you now?" Daniel remained silent. Because that answer, he still didn't know. Daniel had been up all night. He stared at the ceiling of the hotel room where he was staying, his mind spinning. Returning to the market meant resuming his life, his empire. But it also meant less time with Luca. And that idea bothered him more than anything. Deep down, he knew that if he accepted, he would soon be up to his neck in work again. Trips, meetings, negotiations. The time he was building with Luca would simply disappear. But giving up everything he'd built to be a father, was that the right choice? He never thought he would be faced with this dilemma. But now, he could no longer run away. The next morning, Daniel went to Laura's house. She opened the door and frowned when she saw him there, unannounced. "What's wrong?" "I need to talk to you." She hesitated for a second before opening the door wider. "Come in." Daniel walked in and looked around. He had been there before, but this time he felt something different, as if this place was beginning to mean something real to him. Laura crossed her arms. "What happened?" He took a deep breath. "Enrique made me an offer. If I accept, I can go back to the market." She nodded. "Will you accept?" Daniel looked away. "I don't know." Laura waited. If you accept, will you have time for Luca? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. That's the question. She crossed her arms. You may be here now, but I know you, Daniel. I know how all-consuming your work is. If you go back to your old life, how much time will you have left for your son? He had no answer to that. Later that day, Daniel met Luca in the park. The boy ran up to him, excited. You came! Daniel smiled. I told you I'd come. Luca pulled his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. The boy led him to a small pond where some ducks were swimming. I like coming here, said Luca. Daniel looked at him, trying to absorb every detail, because deep down he knew that this decision would affect this little boy forever. Luca, what do you think about me seeing you less often? Luca frowned. Why? Daniel sighed. Because maybe I need to travel more. The boy was silent for a moment, staring at the water. Then he answered quietly, I don't want you to travel. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. But what if it's important? Luca looked at him. Am I important? The question took Daniel by surprise. He swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat, because at that moment he realized that there was no choice. He had already decided. That evening, Daniel sent a message to Enrique. I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept. The reply came quickly. Are you sure? Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Yes. Now I know what really matters. He hung up the phone and let out a sigh. For the first time in years, he felt he was making the right decision. The next morning, Daniel woke up feeling a lightness he hadn't felt for years. He had made his decision, and for the first time, there was no doubt in his heart. But now the most important thing was missing, telling Laura. In the late afternoon, he went to her house. Laura opened the door, surprised to see him. You again? He smiled slightly. Oh, can we talk? She nodded and let him in. Daniel took a deep breath before speaking. I turned down the offer. Laura's eyes widened. What? I said no. I said no. She blinked, trying to understand. Do you realize what you're saying? He nodded. I do. She crossed her arms. Why? Daniel looked at her seriously. Because I've finally understood what matters to me. Laura was silent for a moment. Are you really willing to change your life for Luca? He nodded without hesitation. Yes. She looked away, biting her lip. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. I just wanted you to know. Laura sighed. You surprised me, Daniel. He smiled slightly. I'm trying. She looked him in the eye. And what happens now? Daniel took a deep breath. Now, I want to be a real father. Laura watched his face for a long moment. Then she smiled. So, I think you need to tell Luca. The next morning, Daniel took Luca for breakfast at a snack bar near the park. The boy nibbled a piece of cake absent-mindedly. Luca, can I tell you something? The boy looked at him. What? Daniel held his cup tightly. I'm staying. Luca frowned. Stay where? Here. With you. The boy blinked. For real? Daniel nodded. For real? Luca was quiet for a moment, as if processing the words. Then he smiled. That's nice. Daniel laughed. That's it? The boy shrugged. I already knew that. Did you? Luca shook his head, excited. Yes. Mom said you weren't leaving anymore. Daniel looked at Laura, who was sitting at the next table. She smiled slightly and shrugged. I had a good feeling. Daniel felt something warm in his chest. He had never thought that this would be his life, but now he wanted nothing more.